Before I explain what they erased, you need to understand what the James Webb Space Telescope saw. Something that should not exist. My name is Dr. Sarah Kohler. On September 14th, 2024 at 3:47 UTC, we photographed a region of space where no light should exist. What came back wasn't darkness. It was a structure, living, expanding, and it knew we were watching. The coordinates were RA 02 hours 14 minutes 33 seconds, DEC minus 73 degrees 22 minutes 11 seconds. A void so absolute it appeared as a mathematical anomaly in our surveys. A pocket of space that violated every cosmological model we've built since Hubble. We called it the Dark Zone. No official catalog name, no mission log, just 4.2 billion light-years of nothing in every direction. We weren't supposed to look there. Dr. Marcus Webb had spent 11 months fighting for observation time, arguing we needed to investigate this statistical ghost in our data. It appeared during routine calibration checks as an impossible absence, a region where the cosmic microwave background radiation showed unexpected coherence patterns, as if something was organizing the ambient energy. NASA finally approved 4 hours, probably just to shut him up. I was assigned as backup observer because no one else wanted to waste research time on Marcus's empty space crusade, as the director called it. The first images arrived at 6:22 UTC. I was alone in the analysis room at the Space Telescope Science Institute in Baltimore when the near-infrared camera data came through. Standard protocol, wavelengths between 0.6 and 5 microns. I expected darkness, black pixels, maybe some background noise to subtract and forget about. Instead, the screen filled with light. Not stars, not galaxies, something else entirely. Filaments of sourceless luminescence, branching in fractal patterns that hurt to follow with your eyes. The spectroscopic data showed nothing. No hydrogen alpha emissions, no oxygen lines, none of the usual markers of any known astronomical phenomenon. The light simply existed at wavelengths of 1.2, 2.8, and 4.6 microns with mathematical precision. Prime number intervals in the electromagnetic spectrum. I ran our structural recognition algorithm, the same software we use for identifying galaxy morphologies and gravitational lensing patterns. I expected random noise, maybe some instrumental artifact. The computer returned. Symmetry detected. Repeating units, 847,392. Pattern confidence, 99.97%. I stared at that readout for 40 minutes, not moving, barely breathing. It was a grid, a network spanning our entire 2.2 arc-minute field of view, with nodes evenly spaced at intervals of 0.034 arc-seconds. At the distances we were observing, that translated to approximately 680 light-years between each node. Perfect geometric spacing across billions of light-years of space. At first, I thought it was an instrument malfunction, corrupted data packets from the Deep Space Network relay, maybe a processing error in the FITS file conversion. But every technical specification was perfect. Temperature readings nominal at 38.7 Kelvin, pointing accuracy confirmed to 0.001 arc-seconds. Power systems stable. Every diagnostic green. The structure was real. I called Marcus at 7:15. He arrived 22 minutes later, still wearing yesterday's shirt, coffee forgotten in his hand as he stared at the monitor. We spent the next 6 hours checking everything, running every calibration sequence, reprocessing the raw data multiple times. When we pulled archival Hubble data from adjacent regions, we found traces of it, faint hints at the very edge of detectability that we dismissed as noise or cosmic ray artifacts. The James Webb, with its 6.5-meter gold beryllium mirror and unprecedented infrared sensitivity, had simply seen what Hubble couldn't quite resolve. Then I noticed something that made my hands shake as I zoomed into a high-resolution segment. The filaments were moving. Not quickly. The motion was only detectable by comparing timestamps on sequential exposures taken 847 seconds apart. But they were definitely propagating, extending outward at approximately 0.000031 arcseconds per hour. At cosmological distances, that meant the structure was expanding at roughly 12,400 kilometers per second. 4% the speed of light. Nothing natural moves like that. Nothing we've ever observed in the universe exhibits that kind of coordinated directional growth across scales of billions of light years. Galaxies don't move in unison. Dark matter doesn't organize itself with geometric precision. This was something else. Marcus pulled up a chair, his face gray. We need to measure how far this extends. We spent the next week requesting emergency observation time, calling in every favor, pushing every boundary of protocol. The review board was skeptical but intrigued by our preliminary findings. They granted us 16 additional hours spread across 4 observation windows, targeting adjacent coordinates in a grid pattern around the original dark zone position. The structure appeared in every single observation, every single one. Different orientations, different densities, but always the same fundamental architecture, filaments, nodes, mathematical precision extending beyond our observation limits. In every direction we looked, we mapped an area of approximately 0.08 square degrees, roughly 4 times the angular diameter of the full moon, and the pattern never broke. It just continued, like looking at a small section of an infinite 3-dimensional web. Marcus started calling it the lattice. On September 29th, during our 3rd observation sequence, we detected something new, something that changed everything. There was a pulse. It lasted 1.7 seconds, a simultaneous brightening of every node within our field of view. The intensity increase was exactly 34% across all wavelengths. Not approximate, not close, but precisely 34.000%, as measured by our photometric systems. Then it faded back to baseline with perfect synchronization. We checked the timestamps obsessively, running the analysis 17 times to be sure. The brightening occurred at every node at precisely the same moment, with no propagation delay, no light speed lag across the structure. That's when we knew we weren't looking at something natural. Light doesn't work that way. Information can't propagate faster than light. It's the bedrock of physics, the foundation of causality itself, the one absolute rule we thought could never be broken. But this structure, this network spanning billions of light years, had just communicated with itself instantaneously. The implications were staggering. Either we were witnessing quantum entanglement on a cosmic scale, which shouldn't be possible for macroscopic structures, or something was manipulating space-time itself in ways we couldn't comprehend. Marcus spent an entire night running calculations, trying to find any physical framework that could explain what we'd observed. He found nothing. The lattice violated everything. We prepared our findings carefully. 15 pages of observational data, spectroscopic analysis, structural measurements, temporal correlation studies. We were meticulous, conservative in our language, avoiding wild speculation, just presenting what we'd observed with clinical precision. The paper was titled, Anomalous Structural Patterns in Deep Space Infrared Observations, Initial Survey Results from JWST Dark Zone Study. We submitted it to the Astrophysical Journal on October 7, 2024. On October 9th, 2 men in suits arrived at the Institute. They weren't from NASA. They weren't from any agency we recognized. They wouldn't identify their organization. They had badges that looked official but carried no organizational insignia, just alphanumeric clearance codes, 7 Alpha Black. They spoke quietly, politely, with the kind of calm that comes from absolute authority. They asked to see all our data. They asked us to sign documents we weren't allowed to read completely. Just the signature lines at the bottom of pages filled with redacted text. They used words like national security and classified observations and potential threat assessment protocols, phrases that didn't make sense in the context of astronomical research billions of light years away. When Marcus refused to sign, asking reasonable questions about jurisdiction and scientific freedom, they simply looked at each other. Then they stood up and left. Just walked out without argument, without threat, without another word. The next morning, our observation logs were gone. Not deleted, gone. Removed from the official JWST archive as if they'd never existed. The DOIS for our datasets returned 404 errors. Our submitted paper was withdrawn by the journal with a 2-sentence explanation. After consultation with relevant authorities, this manuscript has been deemed unsuitable for publication. The authors have been notified. We hadn't been notified of anything. I still had copies, local files on multiple drives, encrypted backups, everything. Marcus had sent versions to colleagues in Chile, Australia, and the Netherlands. We weren't stupid. We knew how to preserve data. But within a week, everyone who'd received our files reported the same impossible thing. Corrupted data. The FITS headers were intact. All the metadata perfect, but the actual image data had been replaced with zeros. Perfect absolute zeros across every single byte. That's not how data corruption works. Files don't corrupt in perfect patterns. That's intentional deletion. That's surgical removal of specific information while leaving the container intact. On October 23rd, Marcus didn't come to work. His apartment was empty when I went to check on him. Not cleaned out, empty, as if no one had ever lived there. Furniture gone, personal items gone, his car missing from the parking garage. His institutional email bounced back as user unknown. The HR department had no employment record beyond a single line in an old spreadsheet. Webb, Marcus, position terminated, October 23, 2024. When I asked his colleagues about him, people he'd worked with for 6 years, they looked at me confused. Who? They'd say. I don't think anyone by that name works here. Are you feeling okay, Sarah? But I remember everything. I remember his laugh when we first saw the data. I remember the coffee stain on his desk. I remember his handwriting on the whiteboard, the equations he'd scrawled trying to make sense of what we'd found. I'm writing this on an air-gapped laptop, never connected to any network. I'm storing it on physical media. I've made copies. I've hidden them in places I won't specify. Maybe someone will find them. Maybe this will survive whatever's happening to me, because it's still happening, right now. Last night, I accessed the JWST observation schedule through a friend's credentials, someone who doesn't know what I'm looking for. The telescope is observing the dark zone multiple times per week now. Long exposure sequences, full instrument suite, NIRCAM, NIRSPEC, MIRIFGS/NIRISS. But none of the data is public. It's all classified under directives I've never seen before, routing codes that don't appear in any NASA documentation or scientific protocols. They know what's there, they're monitoring it, and they don't want anyone else to know. Here's what keeps me awake at night. Our measured expansion rate was 12,400 kilometers per second. That means in the 4 months since our first observation, the lattice has extended approximately 320 billion kilometers further in all directions. That's 2,140 astronomical units. That's beyond the heliopause, beyond Voyager 1, beyond the boundary where our solar system's influence ends and interstellar space begins. The lattice is getting closer. I pulled archived data from every infrared survey telescope I could access. WISE, Spitzer, IRAS observations from the 1980s, even some declassified military satellite data. When you know what to look for, when you process the data with the right algorithms, you can see traces of it everywhere. Faint threads at the noise floor, barely distinguishable from random fluctuations, but present. The lattice isn't just in the dark zone. It threads through the entire observable universe, like mycelium through soil, like neural pathways through brain tissue. It's always been there. We just finally built an instrument sensitive enough to see it clearly. Last week, I drove 6 hours to Cherry Springs State Park in Pennsylvania, one of the darkest places on the East Coast, a designated dark sky park. I brought a portable spectrometer, a modified DSLR camera with the infrared filter removed, and a notebook. At 2:30 a.m., when the Milky Way was directly overhead and my eyes had fully adjusted, I saw it. With my naked eyes, geometric patterns in the darkness between stars, barely visible at the absolute threshold of human perception, but there, and pulsing. The same 1.7-second cycle we'd observed through the James Webb, now visible from Earth if you knew where and how to look. The lattice is much closer now. We're inside it. Earth, the sun, the entire solar system, embedded in a structure we don't understand, built by something we've never conceived of, for purposes we can't begin to guess. I've noticed changes in people, subtle ones at first. Colleagues pausing mid-conversation, eyes distant, as if listening to something only they can hear. Long silences that feel pregnant with meaning. When I started monitoring social media patterns, not the content, but the metadata, the timing, I found mathematical sequences in post intervals, Fibonacci progressions, prime number gaps, as if people were being synchronized to some underlying rhythm. Sleep patterns are shifting across populations. I've been tracking data from fitness apps, sleep monitoring devices, anything with timestamps. People are waking at coordinated times. Not the same time in each time zone, but the same moment in absolute terms, accounting for Earth's rotation. 3:47 a.m. in New York, 12:47 a.m. in Los Angeles, 8:47 a.m. in London, all the same instant, spreading across the planet like a wave. We're being integrated. Yesterday, I found a file on my computer I didn't create. It appeared in my documents folder with no modification date, no creation timestamp, as if it had always been there. A FITS image file labeled simply observation_final.fits. My hands were shaking as I opened it. It showed Earth from space, our planet centered perfectly in the field of view, photographed with the same instrument configuration we'd used for the dark zone observations, and threaded through it, passing through the atmosphere, the oceans, the continents, presumably through the mantle and core itself, were the filaments, the same luminous structure we'd first seen 4.2 billion light-years away, now interwoven with our world at a density of approximately 240,000 nodes per cubic kilometer. The entire planet was suffused with it, like a Christmas ornament wrapped in infinite threads of light. We're not just inside the lattice, we're becoming part of it. The men in suits haven't returned, but I see unfamiliar cars parked near my apartment now. Different models, different plates, but always someone sitting inside, always watching. My phone has developed a strange echo, a 0.7-second delay that shouldn't exist on digital cellular networks. Sometimes I hear fragments of conversations that aren't mine, whispers in languages I don't recognize, or maybe not languages at all. Maybe something else using the same frequencies. I don't know how much time I have, I don't know if this document will survive or if it will be erased like everything else, but I have to try. If you're reading this, you need to look up at night. Go somewhere dark, away from city lights. Let your eyes really adjust. It takes 30 minutes, maybe longer. Don't use your phone. Don't check the time. Just look at the darkness between stars. You'll see it too. And when that first pulse of recognition hits, that thought that doesn't quite feel like your own, that rhythm in your chest that doesn't match your heartbeat, you'll understand why they erased Marcus, why they're erasing me, why they're trying to hide something that's literally everywhere in everything, including us. The James Webb Space Telescope is still watching, still collecting data, still observing as the lattice continues its work, whatever that work is. Once you see it, it sees you back, and then you're part of the pattern too.